Of course,
starting.
right.
Wonderful.
Thank you too for the invitation, and I also really appreciate that Yuri took the chance to be with us. So, as I'll be a bit, let's say, the moderator of this conversation, I prepared two short presentations, one for my background and one for Yuri, so people get an idea what we do for those who are not familiar with. So for myself, I'm an artist and an engineer. Yeah, let me click here. And I create works which are aimed at the wide audience using a simple visual and functional language. And since I have studied acoustic engineering here in Denmark, and I was always passionate about music and sound, I mainly incorporate sound and movement to my works. And somehow I do this because I want to investigate concepts like constant change, control versus unpredictability, and generally how probabilities and game affect our lives. Because I tend to think that whatever we do in our life, whatever decision we make, is never certain, basically. Depends on circumstances, depends on unpredictable factors. So what we can do is only somehow to direct our probabilities. Let's say I do this because it has higher probability of happening, but we're never certain what will be at the end. You see the pandemic, for instance, many plans were cancelled and people had to rechange their routes for several reasons and several circumstances. So that's what I investigate, and generally my works can be seen as minimal, playful at the same time, and there is an element of entertainment. I tend to believe that my works can be understood from kids to grown-ups. At the same time, though, I try to use some symbols, let's say balls that hit each other somehow to represent individuals that struggle with each other and so on. And through this kind of symbolisms, I investigate the concepts that we talked about before, like order and probabilities and unpredictability. At the same time, for about 10 years, for more than 10 years actually, I have been working with Audion AS, which is a Danish company quite known for making a room acoustic software package, which is used by architects to predict sound in spaces. Basically what they do is they create a 3D model of a new concert hall, a new theater, and they put it in the Audion room acoustic software. And they predict the propagation of sound and how the audience would listen to music or speech. And then inside the software, we can alter materials, we can alter the geometry or the location of sound sources as an iteration process to make the design as optimal as possible. And basically, this software is used by engineers and acoustic consultants all over the world. So as you can imagine, being a part-time engineer, part-time artist, I also try to somehow help these two disciplines each other. So many times I use elements from my engineering job to my art, and occasionally my inspiration from art I bring back to the company, and because I also make all sorts of graphics and stuff like that for Audion. It's not only programming that I make for them. I was born in Athens in 1983. I studied mechanical engineering in Greece and then moved to Denmark in about 2009 to study acoustics. And then after I finished, I started being full-time engineer at Audio. But since I was always making things, I started making some public installations at the streets of Copenhagen, and that was the first one was in 2014. 1 year later, I joined the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts, and at that time, I started working part-time with Audion, so I have enough time for doing my art on the side. And that has stayed until now. Particularly between 2017 and 2018, I collaborated extensively with one of my professors in the Art Academy, and that was Angela Melitopoulos. She had an ambitious project called Crossings. Oops, I'm sorry. That was presented at Documenta 14 in Kassel, and later on in Sevilla, Spain, and also here in Denmark in Kunsthaus-Charlottenburg. It was a 4-channel video installation with 16 audio channels on top of people's head at the ceiling of the project. And I was the responsible person about the audio part and how to implement this audio installation, because basically what we wanted was sounds traveling all the time above people's head, not just static speakers, but also moving all the time. Generally about my art, I would say I have different bodies of work. Some of them are automotive, meaning that they operate by themselves, using motors, or are interactive because people activate them. Some of them are flat, wall pieces, some of them are 3-dimensional, and I have done many sound works, but as well as silent works. And I would say even the silent ones, they always have some kind of movement involved. So in one or the other way, I always use sound or movement in my works. I have done several group shows in Denmark particularly, and 6 large public installations in Copenhagen. I have also collaborated with known upcoming artists like Kim Richard Maydale or Alexander Hallen. She's a composer and a musician. And I'm happy to say that in September, the coming September, I'm actually realizing my first major solo show in Denmark, and that will consist of several sound sculptures and installations all over the place, activated at different times. And although there will be machines, they will try to produce mechanically sounds from nature. That will be like sea waves or bird songs or leaves crashing with each other, wind, and so on. So let's have a look at some of my works, which I think are representative, especially dealing with sound. This instrument, or you can actually call it a music machine, I created as a commission from Kim Richard Maydale for his exhibition called Lilith Grotto at Overgen. It was 2020, I think 2 years ago, basically. And the commission was that he wanted an instrument to be played by people and generate random sounds, which were recorded all the time by 2 microphones above the instrument. And then these recordings later on were used by Kim together with other recordings to produce an album, an audio album. We can actually hear how the machine sounds through the video. Oh, sorry. I think I can speak a bit on top of it. You have 5 segments because all the strings runs from the back to the one string, but separated. And then the segments at the back are apart, so I get longer lengths and then lower frequency. And then the segments towards the front are narrower, so I get more frequency. The intention was not to tune the instrument, but to achieve some kind of cluster of lower chaotic patterns and then higher frequency chaotic patterns. And of course, the audience has multiple possibilities of playing the instrument, like how many balls you throw, when you throw them, and then you can also rotate the internal part. And the design has been quietly inspired from my engineering background both, let's say, from turbines or from zeppelins, like airships, or even from submarines. So I really incorporated all of these shapes that I have from my engineering studies inside this instrument. Yeah. Here I have another work, the one I created for my graduation show that was back in 2018, and it's called Stranger's Attractor. And I particularly like that work for this presentation because it links very nicely to some of Yuri's works, where he also uses tubes transferring sound mechanically. In this case, I have this dome where people can get in, and then you have tubes coming from different places of the museum, even outside, and they all gather around the dome. So you can imagine that, of course, you can speak both ways. Either the person inside the dome can speak outside, or people from outside the dome can speak towards inside, but nobody can see each other. And the idea is somehow to resemble also how we function nowadays, especially through social media. We have sometimes an avatar, a fake name, we don't see each other, we have this comfort of distance. People can be also sometimes very aggressive through social media. They can swear each other because they feel this comfortability. Probably they wouldn't do it easily if they were face to face. So that's the idea here, that you can shout, you can call, and you just gather voices without knowing where they come from, basically. On top of that, there is an audio installation consisting of 8 microphones and 8 loudspeakers spread on the surfaces of the dome. So when the voices arrive, they get picked from the microphones and then sent with some delays to the loudspeakers. So that multiplies the voices that arrive and also prolongs the echoes in order to add somehow to the confusion and to make it even harder for the viewer inside to detect where the voice comes from, really. Because they get seated, they think they come from another tube because there is a loudspeaker next to another tube that transfers the voice with a delay. And that changes all the time with a real-time audio program, basically. Yeah, let me then present one more work, maybe. Yeah, this is one of the earliest works. It's a sound work as well, where I explored the idea of something moving in a deterministic way. So basically we have a motor that rotates the disc, and then we have the individuals that constantly move, but we can never predict the exact patterns. And it sounds like that. And very similar, it's a work called Fighting for Some Space, where again we have a disk that moves in a deterministic way. There's a motor underneath, but then the individuals, they do all sorts of free chaotic movements. Somehow shows that in reality, we might feel free like the individuals inside, but we are always bounded by some boundary. Maybe we never realize that boundary. And so I tend to see these silver balls as basically ourselves, and then somebody that really determines the movement, the broader movement for us, but we tend to think that we are free because we and of course, depending on certain areas in the world, sometimes really that makes sense that people fight really for something. They try to take advantage of the small tiny space they have around them. So I just wanted to say that in my works, many times I have okay, two parts. One part which is the deterministic part that has a fixed movement, and then the other part that has many degrees of freedom that goes something a bit random.
George, it's a little bit difficult to hear you sometimes over the
Over the
undefined
video.
mess of cracking sounds.
Okay, yeah. No, but
But
anyway,
Mhm.
I don't think I should repeat now, right? Because that was the last slide of my presentation. I'll go to
No problem.
it
I
now.
could understand
I
you,
think
but
you could get the idea.
I did.
And then, of course, if we have questions later on, we can go back. Let me now bring Yuri's presentation, because Yuri is our guest today. Yuri Suzuki, sound artist, designer, and electronic musician. And I really admire his work personally. Has been also inspiration for my work as well. And he explores the realms of sound through exquisitely designed pieces that examine the relationship between people and sound, and question how both music and sound affect the mind. Yuri has exhibited his installations and sound artworks all over the world. In 2018, he started collaborating with Pentagram, and he leads the team of designers, composers, and developers. And they are based in London, and they have a, an international client base, which tend to push the boundaries of design, technology, and sound, and they cross the field of low and high technology. He was born in Tokyo in 1980. He studied industrial design, and then he worked for a while with an artistic duo, Maiwa Denki. They were actually quite known for their music and electronic. It's basically called an electronic art unit. In that period, Yuri began to explore the relationship between music and technology. And at some point in 2005, he moved to London to study product design at the Royal College of Art, where he further developed his interest in the crossover between art, design, and music, using not only digital technologies, but also analog technologies, which also in my case means basically mechanical movements and somehow old-fashioned devices, which I also particularly like. He has collaborated with various musicians, including will.i.am and Jeff Mills. He has worked with commercial clients such as Google. He has exhibited internationally in Museum of Modern Art in New York, Tate Britain in London, Modern Luxembourg, MoMA, and the Museum of Modern Art in Tokyo. And then in 2016, he received the Designer of Future Award at Design Miami. So let's have a look at some of his works as well. And one project that I really like to present here, which encompasses many smaller works, is the furniture music, inspired by the French composer Eric Satie and the way he described his own music. And somehow it's a project that examines how sounds affect people and vice versa. We have a very nice video here where we can hear Yuri speaking about the project, and let's play it.
Sound has a strong effect on the people. It can give us comfort and a lot of other positive effects. Meanwhile, if it is designed badly, it can also give us discomfort and distract us from enjoying life. My name is Yuri Suzuki. I'm a sound artist and designer based in London. The exhibition title of Furniture Music comes from Set of Music by Eric Satie. It is original ambient music. I have always inspired by his compositions as well as Brian Eno's work. For this exhibition and in my work, I want to have closer attention to the sound which surrounding us and offer subtle improvements through my design. These automated rain sticks are controlled by live data streamed from beaches across the world. This data is used to simulate sound waves. Using white noise and random oscillations, I wanted to create a soothing and relaxing soundscape. This table amplifies any movement or noise on the table with the acoustic chamber. If you have a conversation with someone, it always feels more comfortable to have subtle noises around. This piece is my attempt to create a table which allows people to have better conversations. I believe washing machine and blenders are most noise household tools. This idea came from Matthew Herbert, and who asked me what if we could use sound from them to make music instead of disruptive noise. The musical kettle developed from similar concept. When water is boiled, this kettle tells you with your favorite music. White noise has got a lot of properties. One of them is making silence, originally developed in India back 2009. My white noise machine is a simple way of masking sound. This mobile phone has a music box inside, instead of electronic sound from tiny speaker, which is probably quite provocative. You can get a better quality acoustic sound which is more pleasant for us to hear. I believe sound is a very strong medium and influences us a lot. I hope this exhibition stimulates visitors to listen carefully to what sort of noises or sound exist in the world, and to reconsider if that is what our homes, cities or parks should sound like in the future.
Right. And then I think we can actually go to the conversation. Before that, I wanted to show one work that I think also links my work together with Yuri's, and it's something he created, if I'm correct, in 2021, also during a pandemic. But you say, Yuri? You say something?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it earlier than 2021?
Sorry, can you tell me again? Sorry.
The Sonic Bloom, I think it was created 2021, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it was created during a pandemic period, so somehow shows how people can reconnect to each other after they have been isolated. And he uses elements of transferring sound from one end to the other, basically by using pipes. And as far as I understand, the colors, apart from the aesthetic reasons, they also help people identify the communication channels. And I don't know, Shelly, do you, can I start the conversation? Because I have a question particularly for this work, if I may.
Yeah, please go ahead. It's also the artwork that whenever I got introduced to your work, then I thought, who does that remind me of? And I was trying to find who it was, and it was Yuri. So that's the reason why we contacted Yuri. I remember seeing it in London. Yeah, but go ahead, please.
I have a question for you, Yuri. Also looking at one other work, the Sonic Playground.
Yeah, I think
it's because I haven't experienced myself, but you say you sound is manipulated. Do you have only acoustic means or also digital means in this case for manipulating the sound?
Maybe like good to show like Sonic Playground. Do you have picture of the Sonic?
I do have. It's
maybe
one
like
of the.
It's
here, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. What's the question about?
I was reading because I haven't experienced myself that you say that sound is manipulated when people speak to each other. So I'm curious, is it because of the design of the pipes and the horns, or you also have some digital means on top that distort the sound.
What mean digital? Like
I mean, you know, if you pick up with a microphone and then you have loudspeakers.
no, it's
no.
this artwork. It's everything acoustic, and
Mhm.
so basically, like one aspect, like we closely work with acoustic engineer based in London.
Mhm.
Like he actually kind of calculate like because these design decisions partially aesthetic, but same time decision of how sound efficiently distributed. So there's no you know kind of a you know there's no amplifier, no microphone.
Mhm.
It's purely for acoustic sculpture we created.
Mm-hmm. So especially this particular element here, is it functional? It's kind of a reflector, right? Or what is it? The yellow one.
Yeah, so this yellow one is basically reflecting to, you know, basically it's more of a sound mirror, like this kind of particular
Sound mirror, yes.
yeah, the way to reflecting like sound. So basically there's two like a way, like there's one and another. So if you have far distance, you can have kind of conversation even like without any
Right.
you know speaker or anything.
So I guess the yellow and the blue function together. These are the two mirrors that are opposite each other, right? For sending the sound. I see. Yeah. Nice. Okay, so right. So I see that you of course you collaborate often with other people, and that's actually part of your art practice, that you prefer. And I was actually curious, like do you usually design pieces and then you give them for implementation to other people? Are you also involved in the construction itself? What's kind of the process when you make artworks, if you can share with us?
It depends on the work as well. You know, I do like kind of the design and also more of a conceptual side, like development, and also more of a kind of vision for the sketch. And we have to sometimes like hand over to acoustic engineer to like getting advice, like what's the best shape. And also we closely working with like great fabricators. If you back to Sonic Bloom, it would be great. So,
yeah. Let me see.
So basically, like Sonic Bloom is, you know, like this also like we carefully like design like more aesthetic first, and also conceptually first, and also acoustic engineering, and also more safety side, and also fabrication as well. So there's a lot of team involved for this project.
Yeah, you also said something about aesthetic, so I was curious, like because I'm also in my art dependent a lot on functionalism. So many times I design the pieces so they deliver what I want in terms of movement or sound, but eventually in this iteration process, I made some aesthetic interventions. And I guess you do that as well, right? Let's say this curve up here, that was mostly an aesthetic factor instead of a functional factor, right? Like, I guess as a...
It does have functionality. First of all, like which is actually kind of, this is not only like street level to picking up sound, it's also correcting sound around that area as well. So it does have function.
Correcting, you mean because so it picks up sound and then makes it sound smoother, or how do you mean correcting?
Sorry?
Collecting.
Collecting sound, yeah, of course.
Or I guess the other end of the pipe is what people can speak into that, so it's also producing sound out of it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But I see, yeah, it's kind of picking up ambient sounds and driving them down so people can hear. That's it. Yeah, I see. But so I guess in your practice, the aesthetic part, like the visual part, is equivalently important as the functional part, right? Like how do you determine the colors, for instance?
What did you say? Color?
Yeah, the colors. how do you like you have some primary colors here, red, yellow, blue.
Colors, okay.
Are they also functional as, or they are purely an aesthetic decision?
No, it does have functionality as well, because always kind of this color or any aesthetic or like any like presence of the work need to have reason as well, and partially like this color with like based on the more primal color as well, and especially I have a dyslexic as my background, and it's like it is really helpful to can divide, like for example sentences with different colors, and this installation looks kind of complicated structure, and there's a lot of like horns and also pipes in there. But if I divide with this primary color, it's kind of easy to like follow where the sound is coming.
Of course.
From. And also think about like area as well, because primary color, which is kind of revealing, and also like as a street sound, streetscape, which is actually like this color like doesn't exist in this area, so it's adding more color. So I would say like I never do like a functional reason to choose color or aesthetic or like any functionality. Like it's always have the reason and the function behind, because
There's a reason, yeah.
Otherwise, I feel like a work is quite weak, I think.
Yeah, I see. Interesting. Yeah, because I also believe that many things that we admire nowadays, let's say the shape of a roof like that, or a ship, they always had a functional reason at the time they were made. And now everybody thinks of a roof like that as a cozy thing, but it also had a function back in the past, because people wanted to protect the roof from the wind, so they made it triangular, or they wanted to protect it from the snow, or a steam engine, a train looks very complicated and very nice nowadays as an aesthetic thing, but at the time it was made, it had a purpose. It has a functional purpose. So I believe also in functionalism a lot. Actually, especially this work, I can see what you mean. It's like as if you have three different structures, because I can actually isolate with my eyes the yellow structure, the red structure, and the blue structure, so it feels less complicated in my mind. Otherwise, if they all had the same color, maybe it was even more complicated as it should. So somehow the reason you use three colors, it helped it separate in simpler structures, right?
I suppose one of the functions of the color is simply to attract people to it. And
well, yeah.
yeah.
I have some more general questions, Yuri. You started with design, and then you moved to sound, music, and then you made art pieces combining these two. So how was that transition? Was it because as a kid you were playing a lot of instruments, for instance, in music? How did you finally, you didn't follow a traditional designer's career designing lamps and shelves, but you somehow ended up using sound. So how was that come?
Actually, I started as more sound actually, because initially I was interested more about music and sound, and then I quickly realized that in the process for learning musical instruments, I'm also realized I'm dyslexic, and that's one of the most difficult wall to like learning music basically, because all like musical information coming from musical score, but I couldn't manage to read it. So sort of a kind of I gave up sort of career as a musician because my disability reason. Then I started a fascination toward to not only design mobile art as well, like sort of both combination. I was quite interested as physical presence. And then I studied at Royal College of Art in London. That time, like this really quite amazing kind of department, like doing kind of department called design products. but they're quite like amazing platform to do any. So basically, can investigate it using kind of idea of the product. It could a product can be artwork or could be anything else.
Okay.
And I was kind of managed to combine between like my previous fascination about the music into context of design and art and the physical presence or like sort of like define the outcome. So that's how I kind of like started, I think, because initially my interest was music, and then after that, kind of combined with sort of like a fabrication of the physical presence or other outcome. So it's very much disciplinary after that.
And I guess, yeah, people who are fascinated by music and they have some engineering skills, then eventually they tend to explore sound in general, right? So your passion on music led you to investigate sound as a material itself, like noise as well.
Mm.
And then you expanded your love from music to any kind of sound, I guess, right?
I would say yes, because music or sound terms, there's quite a lot of different usage in the way. It could be music, kind of more about pleasure to listening it, or sound itself, which is just purely function for the notification or something. But
Right.
I was quite interested in that area, which is not enough, kind of investigation how, because I think sound is very primary, quite strong method to communicate with
Sure.
human.
Sure.
It is close to more like a brain, like kind of smell and hearing is kind of the closest kind of sense and most impactful sense for the human being. However, which is not really like enough kind of depth for the research and the depth for consideration. That's something I slowly realize in like a design context, design field. And on the other hand, this like art project, there's it's quite a lot of like that kind of realization of the how amazing to combine like a multidisciplinary output such as visual and also kind of like sound together to make it more like impactful, more like coming to kind of communicate much better to describing about concept. And something which is I very realized when I saw artwork of Christian Marcret, and his absolutely that kind of beautiful execution of the how sound to use for like a different way, and how kind of telling about concept. That was really like realizing the importance of the sound. So that's kind of I would say kind of my fascination is really started, and I feel like this is sort of my mission as well for like my work.
Also, like your mission, as far as I understood, also, let's say from furniture music project, is to make people be more aware of the presence of sound in everyday life, right? Because
In terms of the furniture music, sort of yes and no in a way, because like actually like initial Eric Satie's furniture music has been designed for non-functional music in a way, people not actively listening as music,
yeah,
no, but kind of background. So that means people unconsciously consuming sound, but which is like kind of one aspect of the furniture music project. But another aspect is how we can carefully design for the unconsciously consumed sound in the background. Because, for example, if you're listening sound of the probably like air conditioner sound in your daily life or noise surrounding it, you probably never notice that, but like unconsciously we keep absorbing it, that sound. So we really have to consider what kind of how like carefully to curating it, organizing it, how consuming like sound. I think that's like all about like this furniture and music project, I would say.
Right. Just wanted to say a comment when you spoke about how strong sound is as a medium to and affects people. I remember from back in my physics studies that sound is basically only 1% of any, let's say, energy conversion. If you have two bodies hit each other, most of the energy goes to heat, let's say, and kinetic energy and so on. And only 1% of the energy is transformed into sound. But it's quite impressive how this 1%, and even less, I think sometimes, how this tiny portion is so much affecting ourselves. So sound has, let's say, very low energy in terms of physicality and material, but very high energy in terms of emotions. And that's really interesting. That's why I also like working with sound. Yeah, now speaking about, yeah, did you mention what instrument were you studying? Was it keys? What?
Yeah, I started from like a trombone, like when I was very small. Like my grandmother showed me like a Graham Miller story, which is quite old film about like a quite famous jazzman called Graham Miller. And then I think I was fascinated about like probably that time already I was fascination toward to shape and also physical presence of the instrument, I think, because trombone is a very unique shape, basically. It has got sort of like a long presence and also like a way to play instruments very unique. Like instead of like kind of, pushing keys, actually moving your arms quite like aggressively, then I was more interested in that sound coming from trombone. Then that's a kind of my initial study of the musical instruments, and that time is quite amazing. I was a part of the brass band where I was very like a child and playing some music without any musical score. That helps me a lot. Then like I keep playing trombone after that with a musical score because I was in more band like activity like punk music. And then like of course like my parents tried to teach me how to play piano, but I couldn't manage that because biggest difficulty was musical score, so I kind of gave up to play musical kind of piano. And after that, I'm interested in like a guitar as well, and also there's a lot of different instruments. And then toward to like after I played a lot of brass band and kind of brass band or band activity, it's really a lot of work because I need to collaborate with 9 or 10 people, and which is quite hard for me to adjusting it. Then I was thinking how I can orchestrate myself for the music after that,
and automate some processes, right?
Sorry?
And then I guess you saw the need of automating some of the processes because of course you had to do it yourself, so you had to automate. You didn't have the other.
So because of partially I don't have a skill for orchestration skill, like I can't really write score or anything because I can't really like work with other people to making exactly my image. Then that's revolutionary. I met electronic musical instruments, including like synthesizer and drum machine and sequencer, which is pretty much I could orchestrate this machine by myself.
Right.
And then I became more interested in electronic music because that's kind of how I can realize my vision more quickly, more efficiently. So yeah, so that's kind of a progression of like my like how to obtain like my music, I think.
But if I may say, I can hear in your electronic music some inspiration, I would say, from Japanese music, especially in video games in the 80s. Is that true? Because sometimes is it because you also like to, play video games and stuff? Because I hear some of this retro, sometimes style of.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I'm not particularly big fan of the like game music like chip tune or anything, but came from Japan as well, and also my
There's a big
instrument,
tradition of that.
my instruments I'm playing it is made in Japan. Like
Mm,
I'm working, I have got quite a lot of instruments made by a company called Roland, Korg, and Yamaha,
of course.
which is all like a Japanese company. So maybe outcome naturally sounds like that, but I don't have much. Like first of all, like I'm avoiding quite a cliche, like
Yeah.
because I'm kind of living the time, not considering as like Japan identity as kind of not like samurai, like not like a kimono kind of a era I'm like living. So I think I feel like sort of like thinking about purely what coming from me, like rather than Japan representation. That's always I'm thinking. But I was born in Japan. I was grown up in Japan and also using quite a lot of Japan equipment. So
I think
probably
I think it's
sometimes it sounds like that, maybe.
but I think it's interesting and very nice that you that I can see some of your Japanese background in your art and your music. I mean, it's inevitable and it's very nice because it's an identity itself.
Yeah, yeah.
And also speaking about composing and algorithms, I was thinking how so nowadays, of course, some of your works have quite complex musical algorithms because they also take into account interactivity from people. So do you basically hard program them? Do you mentioned some sequencers and stuff like that, but I guess you also use some kind of max MSP languages as I use, right? Or pure data occasionally, right?
Yeah, but first of all, like I'm not really technically good. Actually, people might be surprised. I'm so myself is quite a low tech person, and I know how programming works, but myself is very hard to do sophisticated programming. First of all, and I always working closely with kind of my colleague, like counterpoint, like he's there, like a consultancy firm, they're running by themselves, but we are pretty much team together, always working some ambitious project. Then in terms of the algorithm, because again, like I'm kind of a I feel like kind of procedure for that. I just want to say everyone on this like kind of phone call, sorry, this kind of Zoom call is. I feel like kind of designing or create something based on the technology will be totally wrong way. I feel like because this technology is there, like let's bite it, do something. That's something I don't want to do.
Interesting point.
Technology is just method, like to help your vision. That's how I feel. Then like, just something like for me, it's kind of uncomfortable sometimes. Like people say, okay, virtual reality gonna be great, augmented reality, or like NFT gonna be great. Then I feel like kind of, I would like to choose like a right occasion and right timing to doing it. Then something like strike me a lot was in terms of the kind of creating quite ambitious project, for example, like one example which I did in Margate in England is that kind of welcome chorus project. So basically, brief I created is how we can democratic way to create music with 1,000 or 3,000 different people's voice or lyrics or melody contribution.
Maybe I can
Because,
find it.
which is almost impossible to do as a human being to doing it because if you can imagine like 1,000 people say different opinion to composing one music, that's an impossible task. However, if we can use algorithm and machine learning, that's the method to the kind of the way to make that concept to be happen. So that way, like I started creating installation based on the artificial intelligence slash machine learning. So then after that, kind of probably you mentioning about sequencer is like an electronium project, which is quite famous composer called Raymond Scott. Like he's very active around 1940 or 1950, and he's such a visionary, and he's really like forward-thinking person, because he's different kind of beliefs, like technology to help, or technology to occupy like a music field, or creative field. Then he built himself a lot of different electronic musical instruments. Then his final ambition was making like a self-thinking, machine-thinking musical composing machine, which is called Electronium. And he commissioned by Motown Music from US, and he got quite a lot of money developing that machine. However, he couldn't manage to finish it, because such his way of think is quite advanced. Like that was 70s, and there's not much sophisticated technology that exists. Like a very primitive computer was there, but he cannot really do as a sophisticated programming like we are doing now. Then that project hasn't been finished. Like, to be honest, I think the project never, has got a lot of myths, urban like legend in a way, like how he created self-learning or self development like musical instruments. Then, but I realized his like look at his vision, and easy to think about if you can use particular technologies such as AI, and which is kind of Google openly like giving for one specific like format called Magenta, which is more focused on musical composition based algorithms they are doing it. Then I thought that if we can use that method, we could realize his dream. Then I realized that project for the Electronium project, we actually created simulation of that machine in the software. And so that's kind of how I use AI as well. So yeah, it's really interesting fact that there's a lot of like technology exists, and probably something that's quite popular. However, we, and also I, probably like think about vision first and narrative, what I want to achieve, then like start researching about which technology can be used. So that's kind of a way actually I work all the time.
Well, and yeah, so that answers also another question I had in mind, that you're not basically particularly, let's say, engaged with one material or one device, because every time you choose your means, your mediums, depending on the concept, right? You first start with a concept, and then you just try to realize, instead of, working with you don't have a favorite medium in a way, or do you?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but I think obviously, each like direction, some couple of series in there, like such as Sonic Bloom and also Sonic Playground. It's sort of same line on the same concept.
True.
But it's more about sort of variation as well. And also recently I do more about the word sound based idea, which is really like representing sort of black sphere in the way. And we already made 5 or 6 different versions for that. So different has got sort of series for the particular direction, which I like as well. But most important, as you say, narrative concept.
And yeah, it's what drives.
Idea is important. Then based on that, like how can we realize that? Then like some technology or method gonna be naturally can forming it, I think. So most difficult part is really like your idea and my idea, then how we can realize it. And also there's a kind of limitation as well. We always have the budget limitation or the timing as well, how we can realize that vision.
Or technology limitations, and maybe you have to reform the original concept to something else in order to realize it. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think like, I think that's kind of really good way to think about it. So yeah, I think really like that point is like slightly different from kind of computational artist. I think that's something I feel, because first of all, I'm quite low tech person, but I do have fascination for the technology, but I treat technology as a method.
But when you say low tech,
Mm.
because you said you're more passionate about low tech, so basically, are you passionate about when you? I just want to understand what you mean with low tech. Is it the shape? Are you passionate about, let's say, making sound by things hitting each other? How do you distinguish the low tech with the high tech?
Well, I think first of all, it's more of a level for skill. I think that's something I can tell because
Right.
yes, I do know like some basis of the programming, for example, but I can't really do sophisticated programming. That's something I can tell. And
But
and also in terms of realizing idea, I mean, low tech is sometimes like starting from, you know, like just like making from paper.
a prototype in a way, right?
Prototype, but you know, like some people like tend to be really jump on like Arduino or Raspberry Pi and stuff. But before going there, I might try more primitive method actually because could be like possible to find a kind of much more simple solution sometimes. So
Yeah. I agree. Some people ask me when I do my instrument, like, did you simulate? Did you calculate everything? And I said, it's not like that really. And that's what saying, you know, what distinguishes, of course, engineering with art, as is a lot of trial and error in a way. The way I define my instrument is basically by trying the materials and hearing them and playing with the strings. It's not only, I mean, you don't do everything with simulation and calculations. It's a lot of, there's a lot of handwork involved. There is some AI processing in sonic pendulum, as far as I understood, right?
Yeah, that's also like a different project actually, because that was more about I would say more client-based art project, and then but like that time already mentioned from client as they would love to use sort of AI part for this project, but for me it's like needed to make sense why we are using AI for this project. Then they actually managed to, this is for the Milano Furniture Fair. And at that time, like in Milano Furniture Fair, it's really busy and everyone in the, you know, kind of a lot of different pavilions and visiting like enormous installation. The people are basically exhausted because kind of like less than 5 minutes crazy impact everywhere. Then it's amazing to like Audi, like this client for this project, and we agreed that let's make something more, you know, not like looking for impact, more about kind of people to have like a longer time, have a soothing effect, and something that people calm down and relax. So we decided to create this installation based on that concept. Then AI became more make sense to use this project because so as a human being, like because there's kind of music for like relaxing ambient music sort of things exist in this world. However, something like difficulty to designing ambient music because ambient music not like 5 minute song. People have to listen like quite a long time. Ideally, like a non-stop music would be the ideal for the ambient music.
Like in nature, when you hear the sea waves, they don't stop you.
Yeah, like sea wave is naturally like kind of created randomness, which is very hard to creating it. Then there's something I realized. Then what if like we can creating sort of like soothing soundscape? And also one thing I have to mention here, as a human brains, it's like really sophisticated than we imagine actually, because human brains are easy to detecting pattern, even like a 1 hour pattern or 2 hour pattern. If it's repeating it, people actually get stressed for that. So then like AI is actually, or machine learning is a method creating like non-stop endless music. So that's what how we use this project, because then it became AI. It makes sense because we create a soundtrack which never ends. So that's kind of how we designed this project.
Very interesting. And I guess, especially for this project, movement, the visual of movement is as important as the sound outcome, right? So,
yeah.
Or it's again, would you say it's purely functional? Yes, there is movement because we had to make the interference between, or of course.
I think like a really interesting fact using pendulum for this project. So because this is basically like a lot of pendulum on this like things and keep like moving it depending on the algorithm. And each pendulum has like a speaker. But I think this is also like sort of like how people can calm down as a sort of like the method of Doppler effect, like left and right. Sound is panning it, and which is actually giving comfort as well, and also really interesting.
So this swinging movement is also somehow hypnotizing, like
yeah, hypnotizing method, isn't it? Because you are using for like hypnotizing effect for like left and right panning with the sound. So that's also part of this installation.
Nice. I really don't want to forget speaking a bit about this one, which I have seen and I had mentioned when we first met.
Yeah.
I really like some of your pieces. I can still play without sound. I feel some of your pieces, if not many of your pieces, have somehow some sarcasm, some satire, sometimes for things that happen in our society. So at least correct me if I'm wrong, looking at this project of making a sophisticated audio separator somehow criticizes our society, which is full of gadgets and engineering solutions sometimes for not particularly important need, right?
Yeah, but this project is actually not really, okay, it's more about actually really purely client project we did long time ago. And I don't have particular opinion for this project because this is a bit more followed by what client wanted in the way. So because I'm now in the company called Pentagram, but at the same time I'm an artist as well. And then this time I used to running kind of a consultancy studio for the more of the art and design in a way. Then client came to us about to do some project with us. And then so that's kind of how we came up with this project. But yeah, I would say, yeah, this is kind of slightly different like from
a lot of humoristic.
yeah.
But you have another one also that is kind of in the same spirit, called, is it Breakfast Machine? How was it called?
Yeah, Breakfast Machine is totally different project actually, because that's purely for my passion to create.
Yeah, but so, somehow has this similarity of like making elaborate things for simple tasks, right? Or...
yeah, I think only things I'm interested for the
I'm trying to find it. Is which category is the breakfast?
Is because like I'm kind of like interested in the world that we have is everything quite sophisticated in terms of technology. Like we can use so much things from your phone. However, just realize like not some people know what's happening inside of that black box or small like
Okay.
Then I was thinking about a more primitive way to think about how like things work around the world. I think more educational piece of this project because this is really involving so much people's workshop. It's not only my project. It's very this is sort of project Breakfast Machine. So this is really like it's a way like a simple action, probably like a breakfast to compare with lunch or dinner. Probably most, probably easiest like kind of meal you can create. But that means like quite like a primitive way you can cook something. So that's how we started this project, and then how we can mechanically and people think that not only me, just like kind of doing like trying the error to making sort of machines to purely making breakfast.
Mm.
That kind of like moment, like we just like manipulate machines these days, but we never really think about structure. We never think about how doing things. So this is kind of not really sonic or music-based work.
Yeah.
I'm also interested in sort of almost a bit like fear in a way, like this world, not many people actually don't know how things work. Even like I have a newborn baby. She's already meeting like sort of iPad, like she's very child, like it's very small, but sort of like a illusion of the machine already, but there's like no way to how to learn like how actually inside the work. So I think that's quite dangerous in a way, because we might be like a slave of the kind of companies, like we just feeding, we never able to fixing it, we never know what's happening inside. So that's kind of like lead to this project.
Right. And that was made when? Which year? It was quite.
I think 2009. I can't remember.
Okay. Yes.
2009 or 2010. Yeah, probably 2009.
Mm-hmm. So I guess right now you have, of course, many plans. What is, let's say, your most ambitious project right now, like the most challenging project that you're running?
Yeah, I think it's obviously kind of like a growing up child, like
yeah,
discuss like a mission for me.
Sure. I can imagine.
But yeah, we have a couple of like installation project running, like from this month, May, May, June, July. Like this kind of quite a big project coming in next few months. So that's how we have been working quite a lot. And also, yeah, we have more about like interested in how something idea I have to realizing, rather than like just waiting for someone to ask to making it. So yeah, it's really hard to say. Like each time, it's most projects quite ambitious, but if we can manage that, it's actually quite good result is coming. So yeah.
Any project that you, let's say, always wanted to make, but there was no particular opportunity to realize?
Yeah, I do have a sort of sketchbook, or there's a lot of like a sketchbook, and also like we made so much proposal as well. So we kind of slowly like kind of send over some proposal for like in the gallery or like kind of client, and we slowly have got pile of the project. And really lucky things, like sometimes some client or like museum asking me to some do work, and actually there's it's actually this project going to be perfect to realize in this context sometimes. So yeah, there's a lot of stock we have, like something we want to make it happen. And it might take like 1 year time or 5 years or even more. Like there's always like some opportunity in there, I think.
Sele, do we have any questions from the audience?
I have a question, so that's all right. As part of our work in the Danish Sound Cluster, we are visiting a lot of companies in Denmark, and that can be everything, from creative people to architects to acoustic consultancy companies, and we see there is definite growth in the companies who are multidisciplinary and who are, they're hired for really interesting projects where they connect, or they bring their own teams of like city planners, engineers, acousticians, and they provide a solution. So it could be the range of projects is very broad, but for example, to design the sound of a space using acoustic treatment, and also a sound installation in a public space or a building, or like in a company canteen or whatever it is, and I think that's a really interesting area. And we recently had a meeting with a company called Efterklang, which is owned by Afri. I don't know if you know them, but
Efterklang means reverberation time. Reverberation, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, in Danish.
Then-
And I was just wondering if that's something that you see also in London design companies, or if it's a type of project that you would be interested in.
Yeah, I can really see, especially Scandinavian companies, and very conscious about sound. That's actually I can see that.
Yeah.
We worked with IKEA's, IKEA's kind of research division before about proposal about how we can use acoustic in different way, and that actually it's never be happen in the other country. I feel like because such a good attention from like Denmark and also Sweden, that kind of project. So and also I lived in Sweden quite short time actually, and
Okay.
I realized like how much conscious, because really quiet in general, and also they always have, because of its kind of cold country as well, already double glazing window, and also kind of noise level. It's quite like a sophisticated level, and the thing to compare with kind of UK, it's kind of people banging door quite a lot, and quite like not much privacy, isn't it? Like people just like shouting sometimes, so it's not
Yeah.
much like a level control. But something I realized, especially in Scandinavian country, has got really cautious about sound, which is actually really enjoying talking with client, like based in the Denmark or Sweden, and that's something that I realized that. But in terms of the city plan, I do really think it's need to be included in any like city planning. But I'm not sure because I'm not really like kind of connected with like city development in London or UK. But I cannot really see much because one example I'm talking about a lot is what happened to London Olympic. Because for example, like one public transport designed by Thomas Heatherwick, and quite like curvy, like it looks really like a well designed like a bus he designed. However, it's really like a one, if you the front window has got really strange like bending of the window, and actually all sound concentrate that place, and you immediately get nausea in there because such uncanny sound and such a really strange like feeling in there. Then I was quite surprised like there's no consideration for the acoustics in the public transport. So that kind of thing shouldn't happen
Right.
anywhere
Yeah.
in the world, I think. So I feel like I would say like for example Denmark or Sweden is more about like kind of more forwarded, like rather than like a rest of the country. I feel like.
Certainly. I think people are more sensitive to sound here,
Yeah.
for sure.
And of
So-
course, they have built regulations which are quite strict in
Yeah,
several.
exactly. So regulation, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, regulation, that's quite important. Like because noise sometimes become pollution, so it's not really easy to, kind of accept it, have like constant noise. So
And it's quite bad because it builds fatigue without people realizing it over time.
absolutely. So yeah, that's also a kind of I feel like sort of mission for me. Like I'm studying more about artists, maybe like sometimes designer as well. But I feel like provoke people's like importance of the sound. So that's a bit like almost like opposed to what I talked about for the furniture music. But I think that the furniture music, but as my mission, it's probably like it's good to people realizing it, like the importance of the sound you're creating it, or like a sound you're consuming it. So that's something like I feel like mission as well. So that could be like a ambitious project maybe.
So you haven't been asked ever somehow to, let's say, to improve acoustics in a building, let's say, right? Like a consultant job, an acoustic consultant job.
We asked a couple of times. It didn't really realize as final project, but in the past we kind of got that got the advice, and also how things work, and also we about doing one project. I can't tell which kind of institution, but they're kind of asking us creating like sort of series of like a soundscape for the particular like a district. and which is quite exciting me a lot because kind of entire street like sound have to curate by yourself and how pleasant sound can be created. So it's not acoustic kind of a acoustic kind of a solution, but
yeah, not absorbing or
yeah, because if you can imagine walking on the street like some speaker to play like some pop songs or something, but instead of usage of the speaker, we could actually create something like a soundscape to like has got sort of like a notification or like feel like more community and feel like more about kind of seasonal difference. So that's kind of things quite excite me a lot as well.
Correct. Thanks.
Nice. But do we have other questions from the participants, Shelly, or should they?
We do not.
Okay.
But if anyone has a question, please feel free to write it in the Q&A.
Because on that context, of course, Yuri, you did this taxi with the loudspeakers. That was, of course, a project for improving, if I'm correct, the soundscape of a city, right?
Yeah, that's it's a bit like kind of symbolic terms in a way. It's not actually in reality has got the kind of not perfect solution, but it's a symbolic way how we can. So this project from like a Danish company called III and headphone company, you sort of kind of ask me to create sort of sound sculpture, and the really idea is how we can treat as kind of street noise.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I thought I muted it.
No problem. But I think, then this idea is kind of this car has got high definition microphone on top and correct absorbing like street noise and translate into the music or like mobile ambient music. So instead of using like a AI algorithm, actually we are using real time noise from the street.
Okay, which is already random enough, right? That's
yeah. Each time you're driving car has got totally different like noise exists anyway. That's how we kind of created this project.
Nice. And it was part of
it's actually this is apparently in the car museum in Copenhagen, I heard.
this taxi, it is there now?
Yeah, apparently it's in there. I never seen it. I think III like brought back to Denmark, donated to the
brilliant.
So I never seen it, but I'd love to see in the museum.
But then it's a nice way to finish the presentation with this work, which is kind of connected to Denmark.
That's true.
Nice. But then any other thing you would like to talk about, Shelly? I'm sorry.
It's very loud. No, I really enjoyed that particular artwork. And I mean, I haven't seen it in real life, but just from the video, we recently had a webinar, well, a few webinars about traffic noise. We know the world is getting louder, and we know that they've done a whole study of the whole of Denmark about the effect of traffic noise on our health and how it's really, they can prove that it's related to cardiovascular disease, dementia, and something else. Well, of course, stress levels and cortisol production. So it's I guess you were before your time even with that one. But traffic noise is certainly a major problem in London. That's why I think it's super interesting if we can have more curated sound design spaces, public spaces in big cities, especially because it really has a detrimental effect on our health, and so many people aren't aware of it.
Yeah, that's quite interesting fact, isn't it? Because such a if it's street noise provoke people a lot, but there's not enough regulation, it's not enough control, it wasn't really considered from the initial city plan either. So yeah, just really feeling like ignorance of the importance of sound. I think that's something I can feel for a long time.
Yeah. So we just have to keep fighting to make people more aware of it.
People associate sound mostly with music and nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. And but I think it's great fact that like a Scandinavian country like Denmark or like Sweden is really interested in that. And also last time we did for IKEA as well, and also kind of interested in like importance of the sound. And
Did you say IKEA?
IKEA, yeah.
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 What did you do for them?
Yeah, we worked for like IKEA's research division called Space 10. It's based in Denmark actually, and Copenhagen, and we proposed 2 projects about using like basically noise cancelling technology, how to like bubbling it to making quiet space, and also convolution reverb, like we are using for kind of a psychologically people think about different kind of size feeling, because as so many people like notice for the sound from echo from your room and so on, like which is actually people slowly recognize from Zoom conference, isn't it? And but how much important to have like this reflection, the psychological even smaller room feel like kind of bigger, that kind
Right.
of
Yeah,
experiment.
the apparent size of the space.
Yeah, so like I can share in this space 10.
Yeah, or maybe if you can share, it's fine. Or do you tell me?
Yeah, so I can show you this one. So this is more of a conceptual piece. Like we did some like simulation and stuff.
We don't do we do you see it, Sally? Are you sharing something to Yuri?
I'm sending that. Yeah.
Ah, you're saying yeah, and then I can click here. Yeah. And then and so do we see?
When was that?
That-
2018.
Yeah, 2018.
Oh,
Yeah.
Space 10.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
we hope to see you back in Denmark at some point.
Absolutely. And also, yeah, there's a couple of like experiment we did for another one, convolution reverb one as well. So yeah, it was quite interesting project, because that's kind of usage in the domestic environment, how efficiently to using sound, and also to think about like our life, like there's so much like speaker in the house, isn't it? Like most of our IoT device based on the audible way, like Alexa and so on, like purely for speaker as well. So we almost have one speaker for one room, and how we can use that speaker to make like more useful. So that kind of idea.
Yeah, you're right.
Nice. Thank you.
Like everything fine then. Sorry.
For
And apology for like changing room a couple of times. I'm so sorry. Like we always have a kind of shortage on the rooms, so I had to kick it out from like 2 rooms. So each time I had to change. Like I had to
yeah. No problem.
No problem. Yeah. But yeah, thank you very much for being here today, Yuri, and also to you, George.
Thank you.
George, you are exhibiting this week. Am I allowed to mention that?
Yeah. I mean, it's the 100 years from Niels Bohr Nobel Prize. I don't know, Yuri, do you know Niels Bohr, the scientist who was one of the founders of quantum physics? He's a Danish, and he's quite celebrated here in Denmark. He was the scientist who made the first atomic model, basically with electrons around the nucleus and so on. And it's true, Sally, there's a group exhibition running in Sofienhul that starts this week. On Friday is the official day for the public. Yes, and I have 2 works for, I guess, for obvious reasons. They approached me because they saw my works and with this movement and particles, and of course that inherently there is a lot of inspiration about scientists like Niels Bohr, although of course I didn't make the works particularly because of Niels Bohr. I actually have a site-specific one which I made for the museum, so that's a bit more closer, but I also have an older one which of course connects a lot to physics, but was made for another purpose that time.
Right.
But yes, it's actually exciting. And
Great.
many great Danish artists also there as well.
Okay, fantastic. We'll include a link in the follow-up email afterwards. Yeah. And Yuri, I hear there may be plans for you to come to Denmark. So I hope
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, it'd be amazing actually.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll definitely come some point.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, last time like I really want to spend time in Copenhagen, but I have to fly to some, kind of like straight to like a different location.
Oh, I see. Yes. Well, you let us know when you come visit, and I'm sure there will be a lot of companies and people and good things going on in the city that will be interesting for you.
That sounds great.
Fantastic. Well, if nobody has anything else, then I will wrap it up for today. Thanks.
Thanks, yeah, all of you, both of you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time, Yuri.
Thank you.
And thanks for the invitation, Sally.
Thanks
Of
so much.
course. Thank you. And
Thank you.
thanks to our audience out there as well.
Thanks to the audience as well. To everybody.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.